This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
My message to them has been very simple. You are not alone. Change is coming, and it will come fast.
Okay, I don't know what that means. That's Governor Rick Scott speaking to the children. You are not alone, of course not. Change is coming and coming very soon. What change? Rick Scott, quite honestly, hasn't been at the forefront. You know, here's the... oh, by the way, where are my manners? Good afternoon. How you doing? This is the beginning. As a matter of fact, we're 5 minutes into your afternoon drive in Dallas-Fort Worth. That's what we do every day, Monday through Friday from 2 to 5 on News Talk 820 WBAP. We are awaiting Mayor Rawlings at 3 o'clock, so be here for that. Not exactly sure what Rick Scott meant when he said change is coming and it's coming soon. How do I say this without upsetting so many people? Here's the thing. The shooting is over. We have tragically lost 17 teenagers. The other teenagers have had their day in the sun, showing themselves to be teenagers, woefully uninformed about how legislation works, about how life works in general, because they are teenagers. My plea to Republicans, Democrats, for what it's worth, the leftists alike, let them be teenagers. Don't treat them as though they are adults with life experience. They're only going to be able to filter things through a teenager's mind. All right? There is no giant magnet, at least that I'm not aware of, that's going to swing over the United States and suck up all the guns. Teach them what socialism and communism is. Believe it or not, we have come to a time in our history, the Rush touched on this, where the Chinese, the communist Chinese, are trying to take us to school on how to run our country. Would they have ever done that in the past? Of course not. But again, from a teenager's perspective, well, gosh, that sounds good. They restrict guns. Nobody has guns, and therefore no one can get hurt. That's great. Well, you also lose your freedom of speech. Well, that doesn't mean anything, does it? Well, I guess when you're 16 or 17, it doesn't. Or it doesn't have as big an impact. My plea for you today, if your public school system is not teaching, is not educating, but merely socializing, get your kids out of the school. If sit down tonight when you get home from work, and I know you're busy, sometimes working 2 or 3 jobs after 8 years of Obama, you're still trying to eke out the same quality of life. This business is no different. But at the same time, when your kids get home, it may shock them, but say, sit down, I want to talk to you. They'll think immediately they're in trouble because they're young people and say, no, you're not in trouble. We just need to. What is socialism? Ask, what is socialism? And if you want to use the middle picture I use, socialism is the rest stop on the highway directly to communism. But ask them, what is socialism? What is communism? What are the pros and cons of living in Red China versus the United States? Don't make this about the gun debate. You can't have a gun debate. Forgive me, this part's going to upset you. You can't have a gun debate with a teenager. You simply can't. Again, you have to remember, and we're so bad at this as a society. We treat children like just really little adults. Forgetting, I suppose, that the mental facilities are not completely formed yet. They've filtered everything through their life experience as adults do. They just haven't had that much life experience. And certainly, they should never have to go through what this high school did or what the church in Texas did or Columbine did. The day of Columbine in Colorado, and I'm trying to remember where I was. I think I was in Southern California. But I can't remember I think his first name was Aaron. I don't recall. But he was hiding under a desk at the time. The gunman fired, but it jammed. Then he fired at his friend, which was hiding underneath the desk with him, and it jammed again. The gunman became frustrated and walked out. And this kid probably had his head on straighter than any adult I've met. But he was not forced into a pro-con or us versus them dialogue by those around him. It was totally different. If I could go back and pull all the sound and do all the things I did in that horrific circumstance, you would see a far different situation. Far different. Because it was about what can we do? And by the way, we did nothing. We didn't do anything. We never do. So if somebody wants to shore up the background check, that's fine with me, because there have been people that have fallen through the cracks, just like the guy that shot up the church and 26 people here in Texas. He should have never had a firearm, but the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing as far as information from the service to the people that do the background check. So, yeah, I've got no problem with that. Anything can be made better. Anything. As far as outlawing guns, which I'm sure in a teenage mind, that would be paradise, especially after what these kids have gone through. Let them have those thoughts. Don't try and use those thoughts for a political agenda. And that's the difference between Columbine and this. It's completely different. If we could roll out the news footage of the Columbine shooting versus this shooting, well, hopefully you see my point. Yeah, we should do something. We should, the arming of teachers, I would think you get your hands full just trying to get students to diagram sentences. If they want to be armed, I have no problem with a teacher being armed. But as far as I'm concerned, it's all about law enforcement. Law enforcement needs to be in the schools. Law enforcement. Not a teacher that volunteers, but law enforcement. And I know the argument is, Rick, you don't take care of gun violence with more guns. Well, that's a false argument. That doesn't make sense. It's a talking point from the left. All right, coming up in just about 45 minutes, Mayor Rawlings will be here. We'll discuss the NRA. We'll discuss some of the Confederate monuments. We'll discuss those things. Now, again, people say, well, Rick, why didn't you have this guy on or that guy on? I don't have a lot of politicians on. Number one, I don't have a lot of faith in them. I know a lot of them, especially in Congress. I talk to them off the air. Most of them are good guys. But you get in that political machine and it chews you up and you play the game or you're gone. So I don't have a line of politicians outside my door. Rick, I want to talk. So the fact that Mayor Rawlings wants to come on shows me a little something, because I'm not going to say, well, and then what happened, Mayor? And then how did you? I mean, he knows that. He's listened to the show. He knows I've been very, very critical. But we'll see what happens. All right. Mayor Rawlings coming up in just a little bit. Your calls. That's next on News Talk 820 WBAP. And good afternoon, 2:18 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. Glad you're along. Toll free everywhere in the country, 1-800-288 WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Mayor, the Dallas mayor will be with us, in about 45 minutes or so. We've got a lot to talk about. Mayor Pro Tem, some cities have vice mayors. Other cities have Mayor Pro Tems. That's what it is here in Dallas. Mayor Pro Tem Caraway has agreed. We had a conversation, and I think it was a productive conversation in the sense that it was obvious that Mayor Pro Tem Caraway was not fully aware of maybe the capabilities of the firearm of choice of this nut job that killed all the kids. And anyway, long story short, he agreed to meet me at Eagle Gun Lanes. That's Mr. Prince's operation, to put his hands on, see, and be educated about, in this specific case, AR-15s, both the kind you can go in and buy, which is the semi-auto, and also we will have there a fully auto, basically it's, not to get too detailed, it's a selector. You can select semi-auto, you can select full auto, so he can see and even fire the different weapons and see what's available to the general public. In some cases, I think you can even have a 3-round burst. I don't know if that's part of Armalite or not, but in any case, we'll have the mayor here and see what he says. All right. Let's go to your calls. Let's go to Tim in Rowlett. Tim, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Tim?
I'm still breathing, Rick. Still breathing.
Well, that's always something. If you're still breathing, keep moving forward.
Yeah, my doctor tells me that's a good sign. But anyway, the people that have given us a $20 trillion deficit, mainly the liberals and the liberal Republicans, now they're trying to turn. These are 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old men. Now they've screwed the country up so bad. Now they want us to believe that we should listen exclusively to these 18, 17-year-old kids. Now, I am not minimizing what these kids went through. I mean, I couldn't. I don't know where I'd be if I had to go through something like that. But they are abdicating their power through their messages. You can tell these kids are being messagized by the liberals and those who want to take our guns away. And I think it's just very telling about the liberals and people like that, the gun grabbers. They will stop at nothing. They will use anybody to gain some kind of political advantage. And they keep saying this is not political. Yes, it is political. Everything they do is political. Nothing they do is not political. No,
I can't disagree with anything you said. Of course it's political. The difference, and I remember because I was very involved at the time on the radio with Columbine, the difference is, the liberals at least had some decency about them. By the way, look up the year. I don't recall the year of the Columbine shooting. At least they didn't use, manipulize, and exploit the kids at Columbine. What we were talking about at the time is where were the parents? You've got sawed-off barrels laying on your dresser of a rifle. You've got fuse cord. This is something I always did. I guess I still do. That was 1999. So it was, 19 years ago. My son, all through, elementary, junior, high school, whatever it was, yes, that's your room, but I look in it all the time. So if you're going to have anything that you shouldn't have, you probably shouldn't have it in your room. I would know if my son or daughter had a sawed-off barrel laying on their dresser or fuse cord for bomb making. I would know that because I used to go through, that doesn't show your kids much trust. No, it depends on how you filter it. It certainly shows caring and love. And he was a big guy. He's, 6'4", 6'5", 240 in high school. And, we would have very, very, very animated discussions. I'll put it that way. And it's like, if you're under this roof, there are rules, regulations, guidelines, parameters. Now, when you get out and get in school, there's not, but there is here. I would know that. So that's what we were talking about in Columbine. Were these parents so disconnected they didn't see, firearm modifications laying around in their kid's room? That wouldn't happen in my house. Probably wouldn't happen in your house. This time around, we're talking about legislation. We're talking about Republicans versus Democrats. We're talking about the loony liberals wanting to outlaw guns and how great socialism is. 20 years makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Makes a huge difference. All right. Mayor Rawlings, I'm not exactly sure how he equates what happened in any significant fashion or insignificant fashion for that matter. The NRA, for some reason, has become the target in this discussion. I don't know why. What did the NRA have to do with anything? Did the NRA arm this kid? No. Were they on site, advising him? No. Did they urge him to go out and shoot somebody? No. So I don't understand what the NRA, honestly, and I'm not baiting you. I am totally sincere when I say, what does the NRA have to do with any of these school shootings, or for that matter, any shooting on the street by a criminal? If a criminal decides to use a firearm in some criminal fashion, how do you automatically equate that to the NRA? That makes no sense. It's ludicrous, as a matter of fact. All right, 2:25 the time. Eric Bushman standing by in the WBAP newsroom, the very latest breaking news. We'll also take a look at that afternoon drive and back with your calls. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Now, let me save that for when we come back. That won't take too long. Your calls straight ahead. All right, 2:33 the time. Glad you're along. Mayor Rawlings will be with us in just under a half hour. We'll find out what he has to say about the NRA coming to Dallas. We've got several things. As a matter of fact, yesterday, we asked you if you could talk to the mayor, what would you do? Now, in other cities where I've worked, we didn't always agree with the mayor, but he would come on twice a month. It was every other week. And it would be basically an update from city leaders to the people that lived in the city. Did that in Denver, did it in Kansas City, did it in San Diego. I've never talked to Mayor Rawlings on the air. Yesterday, some of the questions you are most concerned with: why did the removal of the monuments occur without a city vote? And I think I know the answer to that, but I'm not going to speak for the mayor. Where was the bidding process? Please explain the difference of a sanctuary city and a welcoming city. I'm confused on that myself. Why are we a sanctuary city? Someone wanted to know if the mayor had ever handled a firearm. When would he consider turning over illegal aliens to ICE and not having the Dallas sheriff release them back into the streets? Why can't we get a fence around the police station parking lot? Yeah, that would probably, I'd like to know that. 250 recruits each year and attrition rate is low. We're short of officers. Why can't we have more than the 250? These are questions from you. If you had the opportunity to sit down with your mayor, by the way, the mayor of your city, that impacts the way you live, your safety probably to some degree. Again, I'm trying to make the connection. I don't see the connection between the NRA. How did the NRA end up in this jackpot? there's been a call to boycott by teenagers to boycott the National Rifle Association. That's the top trend on Twitter. The global social media platform is demanding that a variety of companies cut their ties with the NRA, and some have. You know, it happened a day after the NRA leaders attacked the media and Democrats, claiming the fallout from last week's high school massacre was being politicized. And it is. It is. Anybody that will look with an unbiased eye or listen with an unbiased ear knows it's being politicized. One user with almost 250,000 followers tagged a slew of brands in his post, including the NRA partner Hertz Corporation, LifeLock, saying there are only 5 million NRA members, but there are 300 million of us. Well, some people have severed their ties with the NRA. Late this morning, LifeLock owner Symantec and insurer MetLife announced they were going to break off from the NRA. They've stopped their discount programs with the NRA Association. Also, I told you yesterday, there's also an NRA MasterCard. I believe that is, forgive me, I forget the name of the bank. Oh, the First National Bank of Omaha. That's the nation's, I think, largest independent. They said it would not renew its contract with the NRA. Enterprise Holdings, which operates Alamo Rent-A-Car, National Rent-A-Car, they said they're ending their participation effective March 26th. Wyndham Hotel Group announced it was no longer affiliated with the NRA. Now, I don't believe for a second that these teenagers, with the limited life experience they've had, I don't believe that they made this happen. I believe that the liberal tsunami wave, manipulating these kids, made that happen. Still, a lot of companies continue to have a relationship with NRA. Some didn't return a request for comment. Hotel Planner, unmoved by the controversy, said they'd stick by the NRA, and others. They are a gun lobbying group. They are the nation's oldest civil rights group, as a matter of fact. And quite honestly, I think the liberals, this is not a pun, I think they're shooting themselves in the foot. We've got midterms coming up, and it's obvious by what the left has done with these kids in that farce of a town hall that CNN put together. Nobody's going to be voting for Democrats in the midterms unless they want somebody to come take their guns. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, that's the way they've branded themselves. All right, let's get to your call. Cindy Ann. Is that correct? Cindy Ann?
Yes, that's correct. Hello, Mr. Wonderful.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm a retired high school English teacher, and I believe completely that we have to educate our children, because they are going to, if they're not making choices now, they're going to be making them pretty soon. They are going to be the adults that lead this country. We've got to educate them. And it just scared me to death a little while ago. I was driving, and you were talking about how such a large percentage of them are interested in socialism and believe that is a positive thing. So you were talking about, how do you get them to understand? And it reminded me of something I saw a long time ago. It's very simple, and teenagers can understand it, and it's the analogy of the two cows. Have you heard that?
No. Tell me, please.
Okay. So here's what I want to do. So I'm going to have to, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm reading it off my phone. I had to look it up, but here it is. In socialism, you have two cows. The government takes one and gives it to your neighbor. Communism, you have two cows, and the government takes them both and promises you milk, but you starve. In fascism, you have two cows, and the government takes them and sells you the milk. In a bureaucracy, you have two cows, and the government takes them both, shoots one, milks the other, pays you for the milk, and then pours it down the drain. In capitalism, you have two cows. You sell one and buy a bull. And in redistributionism, you have two cows. The government taxes you to the point that you must sell them both in order to support someone else who already got a free cow from the government. Now, don't you think that teenagers could understand that?
But they're not going to listen. They are riding the wave of emotion that has been ginned up by everyone on the left, and it gives me no pleasure to. I'm not one of those talk show hosts that blast the Democrats every day, blast the left every day. I don't believe anyone is 100% wrong 100% of the time or 100% right 100% of the time. But at the end of the day, you have to point this out and view it for what it is. Because if you don't, you're going to be laboring under a sad misconception. And, look at the NRA. I don't know what they did. And already they're being boycotted. So you've got to point out the truth of a thing, if you're to survive. I've had emails all day saying people are joining the NRA because of this. And then you've got huge national companies, international companies, that at the end of the day, they're severing their ties with the NRA. Why? Because of a bunch of teenagers on CNN? Does that make sense to you?
All right. So we...
I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment and the First Amendment and the entire Bill of Rights, for that matter. I'm also a father and a grandfather and a governor. We all have a difficult task in front of us, balancing our individual rights with our obvious need for public safety.
All right, that's Rick Scott from Florida, obviously. President Trump has said he is for raising the age of purchasing a firearm to 21. I don't know that I have necessarily I got my first 22 when I was about 10, I think, or 11. But I only used it with an adult. He wants to shore up some of the cracks in the floor for background checks. That's probably okay with me. I don't have any problem with that. Putting law enforcement in schools, I think it's a must. I don't think you have a choice on that. The tired liberal argument, how do you take care of gun violence with more guns? That's ridiculous. Well, that's emotion driven. That's not logic driven. Arming teachers, if a teacher wants to be armed, that's fine. I really don't care one way or the other. That's not what I want to rely on as a first line of defense because, after all, the teachers are in the line of fire just like the kids. I'd want to be armed if I were there. So, if they want to do that, that's fine, as long as everybody knows what's going on. But the first line of defense should be police officers and limiting the ingress and egress of the school doors. They can do it at a hotel where you can get out, but nobody can get in. I would assume they could do the same thing at a school. It's not like reinventing the wheel. Let's go to Wendy in Denton. Wendy, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Wendy?
I'm doing good. How are you, Rick?
I'm doing well.
Good. Thank you for all that you do and for engaging our leaders and educating them And I hope you have an opportunity when you talk with the mayor and when you have more time when dealing with the mayor pro tem, and I commend him for meeting with you, that you remind them there was a mass shooting just a few months ago down the road in Sutherland Springs, Texas.
Right.
And that the man who stopped that shooter and stopped him from massacring the other half of the church in there was an NRA trainer. He was a civilian. He wasn't law enforcement. He got a call from his daughter out of the blue telling him a man or someone is shooting up the church. He immediately went to his gun safe, got a long rifle or long gun, and went in and engaged the shooter and stopped him. And then he got a civilian to help go chase him down. And it was all over before law enforcement even was able to get there, because an NRA trainer was trained and took action. He wasn't law enforcement, but he stopped the shooter in a massacre just a few months ago in Texas.
Oh, that's Wendy. That's a great point, and I will bring that up. I've said this, even though I have direct family members in law enforcement, both at a regional level and a couple at a federal level. We don't talk about a lot. But at the end of the day, you are your own first responder. I mean, I've said this to the point of redundancy. If I'm in bed and I hear the glass breaking downstairs at someone, trying to get in the kitchen, I don't have a family, but when I did, I would have, picked up my weapon, the cell phone, taken up a position between the perceived threat and my loved ones, the kids down the hall, and called 911 and would have hoped they got there before I had to do anything. But you are your own first responder. You can't have a police officer on your front porch 24/7. So that's why I say if teachers want to arm themselves, I've got no problem with that. They're targets just like the kids, and in some case, I would think that they were probably the prime targets. I don't have a problem with teachers carrying firearms if if everybody knows about it and they've gone through the testing and all that. That's fine with me. But we need law enforcement in our schools. And I think it's got upside benefit in a lot of ways. Number one, to keep the kids protected, but number two, kids get a chance to be around law enforcement every day, and realize that, hey, these are human beings. These are just like your parents or your aunts and uncles or whomever, and make some type of connection, because that ultimately is what will change things. As I said before, we can't sit here and, I hope our society never gets to a point where we have to do this or have to do that. Too late. We're already there. And we let it happen. The value of human life to many people just is non-existent. So to sit around and go, man, remember the good old days? Well, the good old days are gone. And you can sit and hope and all those things you want to do, but it doesn't matter because we're already in the situation. So what do when you're in the situation? You take care of it. And that's what law enforcement would do while we go about the very difficult task of trying to turn this social monolith around and reinstill human value. And from my way of thinking, the first thing you do is put God back in schools. But I don't know why that should be such a difficult thing, but it is. I think that would solve a lot of our problems. All right. I'm going to step aside a little bit early so we can get to Eric Bushman in the WBAP newsroom. Also, we'll check your afternoon drive. When we come back, Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings will be with me, and we'll find out what he meant about the NRA statement and a few other things that you're concerned about. We'll do that next on News Talk 820 WBAP.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820 WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free.
Rick Roberts starts. Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 3:04 the time. Our time is short with Mayor Rawlings, so I want to get right to it. First of all, Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings, I thank you for accepting the invitation to come on the show. I appreciate that.
No, and my pleasure. Anybody that's got intro music like that, I want to be on a show like this. It's fun.
I got a question, Mayor. If you would listen to this 4 or 5 seconds, I have a question.
We've got a contract with them, and I don't think the city's going to break that contract. If they would break that contract, I wouldn't be heartbroken. But we're good. We got a handshake with them, and we're going to support that.
All right. What did that mean? You know, I don't like to put words in people's mouths, but if they break the contract, talking about the NRA and their convention, it wouldn't break your heart. What did you mean by that?
Well, we're right now in a maelstrom, and people are coming out of the woodworks, gun control people, gun advocates people on this, and we're going to be the center of this brouhaha. And mayors usually don't like to be the centers of big brouhahas, and so that's what I was talking about.
So you were saying, if I'm to understand your answer, you're saying that since there is so much divide on this gun debate, which we've had for years and years, you'd prefer it not be in Dallas.
I don't think it's the best thing right now. There's no question. I'd prefer it to be in another city. But you know what? We pitched it. We got it. We own it, and we're going to put on a great show, and we're going to try to keep everybody safe.
I had the pleasure of talking to the Mayor Pro Tem Caraway a few days ago. He said there will be marches and demonstrations. Do you concur?
I don't know, but we'll be ready for them. I suspect. You know, I'll tell you what I want to do is figure out how we could use this time to dial up the dialogue better. You know, because honest to God, I've got friends that are heavy gun owners and advocates all over North Texas, and you know, it's so funny. We can, like, you just get us by ourselves. We can always find common ground on this, and it would be great if we could use this convention as a way to find common ground. Bring NRA and bring some other folks in. Let's not try to demonize each other, but let's try to reach an agreement that we can move our country together. So
you would be willing to sit down with Wayne LaPierre and for educational purposes? I'll tell you what I mean. After talking with the Mayor Pro Tem, it was obvious he had some questions about the shooter and the firearm and this and that and the other thing. So I invited him out to Eagle Gun Range to put his hands on what he was talking about, and he agreed. Which really showed me something, because if you don't know about something, it's very difficult to discuss it. And we'll see how that goes. I would extend the same invitation to you, Mayor. I love gun ranges, and I love shooting, and it's a fun sport. And of course, I'd sit down with anybody. Of course, I don't like people demonizing other people. I just don't. Well, that's what happens when people speak for others.
Yeah, and I'll still listen, but I'll listen to anybody at any time. But the main thing, I mean, no one cares what the mayor of Dallas feels. We've got to get legislators coming together on this issue, though. Well, I think the citizens of Dallas care what the mayor thinks. Maybe, and I that's why I'm thoughtful about what I say. But I meant in the long range, how changes are going to be made is ultimately in the legislative process, as you know. Of course, and I think Mayor Pro Tem Caraway realizes that now, because I'm going to ask you the same question.
How did the NRA end up being the target for this school shooting? Going back to Columbine in Colorado, I was on the air then speaking with a lot of those kids that were there. Our tactics are much different now than they were in Columbine. We were talking about who should know, who shouldn't know, what was in the room, what wasn't. This time, it was almost immediate. Overnight, the NRA was a target. Mayor, can you tell me how that happened?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, look, people want change. They look at the legislators and they say change something, okay? And then they realize that lobbyists, the NRA being one of the biggest lobbies in the nation, we all know that, make sure that people get the right grades on their votes, and so everybody goes beyond the legislators, now to the lobbyists, and the biggest one is the NRA, and so that's why all of a sudden people just kind of did a checker jump there right to the NRA.
Do you think that's fair?
I think it's reality. It's people have got to be accountable for their actions and their points of views. I wish there was a gun lobby called gun owners for responsible gun owners for safety.
Well, that's pretty much what the NRA is when it comes to their safety education programs. I mean, no one ever talks about that.
Well, and I'm not here to kind of beat up NRA or say that they're great. I do think there needs to be some changes, and I do not believe, if we want to be on an opposite side, I don't believe in this slippery slope argument. I believe that that's what history is all about. We change with more knowledge and more intelligence, and we figure out the right strategy. So I wish we could be pragmatic about gun change as opposed to no change at all versus all the change we've got to ban all the guns. There's some place. I'm a radical a centrist. I really am. I feel passionate about making sure, as Aristotle said, that virtue is the mean between two vices, that is the wise man's approach to things, and people on either extreme are better if they come together.
Well, there's no doubt that it's better if people can line up. You said several times in the last few minutes changes need to be made. In your opinion, what changes?
I don't know, this is what I have asked for is the president or Congress. I wrote all my congressmen and all the senators to put a blue ribbon task commission together on how we end mass shootings. I'd love to bring social media experts together, mental health experts, gun right advocates, gun control advocates, school safety people. We had a commission for 9/11. Okay, when those bad guys attacked us, we figured that out. When something major happens in the city, commissions are gotten together and truth is told and ideas come out. I think we're more advocating for the answer is the wrong approach. Advocating for us approaching a process to get us answers, I think, is the right approach, and that's what I'm advocating for.
Would you support putting law enforcement in schools?
I would. Look, I'll do anything to keep our school children safe. It's sad that we have a situation where the most vulnerable, are hurt. And, in the church situation, what is happening in churches today is just blows my mind. I just got out of a press conference, let's try to find common ground, that domestic violence perpetrators, criminals, should not be able to have guns. This is there's a nexus between domestic violence perpetrators and mass murderers. Not all domestic violence are mass murderers, but the lion's share of mass murderers have that in their background. And so, to me, finding common sense approaches like that, honestly, I was thinking about this, and you probably hate this idea, but if someone's kicked out of school for disciplinary reasons, I'm not sure I want that kid having a gun.
No, look, I think there are many ways that we can shore up the background checks. The president has said he wants to put law enforcement in schools, arm teachers, raise the purchase age to 21, and expand the background checks. I don't know that I'm against any of that. Are you for?
would agree with you. I'm afraid that it's gonna die a terrible death.
Well, nothing has been done since Columbine. Nothing.
I know, and nothing, and that's the point. I just say, please, somebody do something. Okay?
Arming teachers, would you do that?
Look, if we believed as a group, let's come together as a group, and that was a part of the solution, I would support it. Okay, but I think just one-off ideas are not the answer. But look, we do it at the airport. Okay.
Well, I would think that we do it.
I don't
we have not near enough time to talk about what we secure and what we don't. Final question, Mayor, and again, my thanks for coming on. What's the difference between a sanctuary city and a welcoming city?
I'm not sure there is a thing called a sanctuary city, okay? Because I haven't been able to get anybody to define what a sanctuary city is. And I'll tell you, Dallas isn't one, and I'm tired of people throwing mud against Dallas because they say we're a sanctuary city. I don't know what we do. We obey every federal law. We make sure that we keep the safety of our citizens premier, and we get the bad guys, whether they're undocumented or not, out of this country and in jail. And so I think it's political semantics, okay? It's these words that are charged to make people emotive, but yet they don't have substance and real clarity around them. And so I kind of reject stuff like that.
I got you. I've heard you say that before. So you are saying that the regional law enforcement will, in fact, or does, in fact, work with ICE?
No question. And we do it all the time, okay?
All right.
We do it all the time. And all this political advertising I see on TV now against big liberal sanctuary cities, it's like, show me one in Texas, okay? Show me one, people. And, stop trying to get votes and stop trying to be critical. This is what divides the country. We need to come together and find common ground because we all want the same thing, people. We all do.
All right, Mayor Rawlings, I realize I went a little over your time constraint, but
no problem.
Hopefully we'll see you with Mayor Pro Tem at Eagle Gun Range, and everybody can sit down and have an educated discussion. Wouldn't that be nice?
I'll go. I don't know if I want to go with Dwight. He may shoot me.
I'll make sure that doesn't happen, Mayor.
Okay, talk to you later.
All right, Mayor Mike Rawlings, and thank you for going over a little bit on our time constraint. I'm Rick Roberts. Your call's next. All right, 21 minutes after the hour. Well, Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings has just told me we're not a sanctuary city, that regional law enforcement does, in fact, work with ICE. So I guess we're not a sanctuary city. Were you aware of that, Lee? I was not aware of that.
Me either.
Yeah. Maybe that's new. Maybe they just passed that before the interview. But he did say that he would go to the gun range, right? He did say that, correct, David?
That is correct.
All right. So you have to get David Prince on and let him know we've got to make room for Mayor Pro Tem Caraway and Mayor Mike Rawlings. And we may even broadcast that on our Facebook here in WBAP.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, we will. We will do that.
Okay.
You can see the mayor and the mayor pro tem actually putting hands on what they've been talking about. Let's get to your calls. I don't. He is a centrist. There is no doubt about it. He is a centrist. Maybe that's what the voters were looking for at the time of his election. I wasn't here then. I was here, but I was back and forth. So he's willing. He says he would be willing to arm teachers. He said he would be willing to put law enforcement in schools. And I agree with both those things. So I'm not on the other side of that. As far as the NRA is concerned, he said it probably would be better if they'd go somewhere else. I don't really understand that. But he's willing. He said he's willing to sit down. Now, did I mishear this? Or did he not say he'd be willing to sit down with Wayne LaPierre and discuss anything?
I believe so.
All right. So
I do know he said he would not go with Dwayne Caraway because he didn't want to get shot.
Well, I took care of that. I won't let the mayor pro tem kill the mayor, I promise. Let's go to your calls. Let's go to Chaz in Dallas. Chaz, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Chaz?
Hey, just fine. End of my work day and all that stuff.
Good.
I used to have an HK9 pistol and a concealed weapons license, and I just kept it around my room. I never really used it. But one time, I was up in my room on my computer, and I heard the distinct pops of shots going off. And I picked up my gun, ran down the stairs, ran outside, and looked and saw a vehicle exiting around the corner up the street. I didn't shoot at it or anything. And I found out later that an ex-boyfriend on the neighbor had decided to come by and shoot up the car in front of the house. So it's just a snap reaction. I didn't think about anything other than protecting, my family and that sort of thing, and seeing what the hell was going on. But the people who are trained and are willing to sort of take the risk and respond to, actions like that are the people I think the NRA is trying to reach and talk to. I can't think of, they're not gun nuts or anything like that. I never felt like one. I just felt like, I decided I'd own a pistol for a while and be responsible.
Well, yeah, and I think most gun owners are responsible. They have firearms for self-protection. That's a constitutional right. I take advantage of it. I'm assuming most of you do too. If you're a gun owner, you're responsible. If you're a gun owner, you haven't taken a human life and probably never want to have to. That's one thing about police officers you need to know. I can't think of any police officer anywhere that wants to take another human life, or they wouldn't be in the business of being a police officer. They're there to stand between you and the bad guys. They want to serve people. They don't want to take people out. They will if they have to. But, between Black Lives Matter and all these other, ridiculous groups, they paint the police, they paint law enforcement with a broad brush. Well, they're all about killing people. That's the last thing they want to do. They want to go to work, do what they do, and go home to their families, just like you do. All right, 3:25 the time. Do you have a better understanding of where the mayor is on that NRA statement he made? I think it's pretty clear. He'd prefer the NRA to go someplace else. But he said, we'll be ready if there are marches and demonstrations. 3:25 the time, your call's next. All right, 3:32 the time. Well, what have we learned, class? The mayor would support arming teachers. Mayor Rawlings would support putting law enforcement in schools. Mayor Rawlings said he would welcome the opportunity to sit down with Wayne LaPierre and discuss the issues. And in light of Mayor Pro Tem saying there are going to be marches and demonstrations, the mayor's response was, we'll be ready. And he'd prefer the NRA to go someplace else. All right, let's get to your calls. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Where am I going? Paul in Dallas. Paul, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Paul?
I'm fine, thank you. Rick, I think I got maybe a 4-step process to help this situation with the guns and the mental health issues.
Okay.
First of all, there's not a government building here in Dallas where there's one door in, one door out. You have to go through a metal detector and empty your pockets. How come they can't do that with our school system?
They could if they wanted to.
Exactly. You'd have to get up an hour early to go to school. That would solve that problem. Number two, all these junior highs and high schools need to gather up the kids in the auditorium. Somebody needs to speak to these kids and let them know how serious the situation is. If there isn't already legislation, let them know there will be legislation to where if you bring a weapon or a gun to school, you're going to be tried as an adult. Put the fear of God in them. Number three, If you're a teenager, adolescent, you got all this pent-up anger in you, you want to shoot up something, go to the office and tell these people I need help, and let's get these kids some help.
Well, some of these kids need help. Some of these kids need to be treated like kids. Kids, are universal in one thing. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. I did, you did, we all did. I mean, that's part of being a teenager, part of being a kid. And that's why it's very, very important. It's important to not overplay your hand. I want the kids to know they're not alone. They know they're not alone. Before the gun smoke even clears, you've got SUVs full of psychologists, psychotherapists, and every other kind of psychobabble expert trying to console them. And I don't necessarily have anything against that. I'm not a big psychobabble supporter, but, this CNN supposed town hall was an absolute setup mess. They were being manipulated by the left, the anti-gun lobby, and, their grief, the horror of what they'd seen was being exploited for political reasons. Anybody that says, oh, no, that was a real deal, is laboring under a sad misconception. It was totally politicized, and teenagers, being teenagers, did what they do. The spokesman for the NRA, what's her name? Dana Lash? Some kid, you're a murderer. Well, she didn't shoot anybody. But that type of youthful, inexperienced emotion is being politicized by the left. You know that, right? So where are the calmer heads prevailing? Well, if Mayor Rawlings stays true to his word, including, by the way, Lee, you're going to have to get a hold of David Prince and let him know we're going to have one more seat for lunch, the mayor pro tem, and myself, and we will televise that for you. All right, instead of just like everybody else talking about the issue. Well, maybe the mayor and the mayor pro tem will get some education out of it. Well, Rick, you're being nice to the mayor. I'm nice to everyone that I think I can make inroads with. Now, there are some on the left that are just so uber left that it's like talking to your dog. He tilts his head, tries to figure out what you're saying, but you're still talking to your dog. All right? He's not going to get up in the middle of the night and write a thesis about it. At the end of the day, if the mayor and the mayor pro tem follow their word, come out, okay, this is an AR, this is what was used in the shooting, here's the difference between a fully automatic, putting their hands on it, firing them if they want to. I think David said he'd even buy us lunch. That goes a long way, other than just standing in front of a microphone out in front of the courthouse saying, well, I believe that from now on, well, if you truly believe that, you need to educate yourself on that. Now, I'm not saying they're uneducated. I'm just saying, how often during the course of a day, unless you're in law enforcement, do you deal with this stuff? That's what I'm saying. All right. Let's get back to your calls. Let's go to Jeff in Dallas. Jeff, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well. One thing you forgot to add to Mayor Rawlings is he didn't say he's a centrist. He said he's a radical centrist. We need to quit calling these Democrats liberals. That's given liberals a bad name. They're radical progressives, okay? They're not happy with anything. They're not happy with themselves. They want change, whatever. They think they know how we all need to live. Here's my biggest problem. And I called Rawlings' office and I called Dwayne Caraway's office this week, and I said to their representatives, here's what they have forgotten. And this goes for Nancy Pelosi and Rand Paul and the rest of them. All these career politicians, they forgot who they work for. Look, you don't start tearing down statues and running off conventioneers and conventioners because it's what you want. Mayor Rawlings, I hope you're listening, because I don't really give a crap what you think about guns or gun control or anything else in this world. You don't work for you. You work for me. You work for the rest of us in Dallas. Dwayne Caraway, you don't work for Dwayne. I know you think you do. You think you're a rock star. You walk around and smile on TV and, kiss babies and, whatever you do, take pictures and act like a rock star, but you're not. You're actually a joke. You work for us. It matters what we think. So y'all are changing laws, changing the country, telling people where they can and can't use the bathroom, doing everything else without asking the people. I don't remember voting on the NRA convention or even having a say. They just come out and do it because it's what they believe, and we idiot citizens put up with it. It's not about what they believe, and some legislation, Rick, is going to go against what I think and what I believe. I have to be willing to accept that. It's what the majority, it's what's good for the majority. The other thing is, supposedly this convention is going to bring in $40 million in revenue to the city of Dallas. It desperately needs it. Y'all are running the city into the ground. Mayor, you're doing a terrible job fiscally. Terrible. And you aren't the first. The state of Texas is $330 billion in debt. I've heard Rick Perry, when he was, interviewed on Hannity and the radio and all the TV shows, take credit for the Texas great economy. Well, Texans, wake up. This state is going broke. We are $330 billion in debt. Just Google the budget. Dallas, same situation. We're going to have trouble paying the pensions, which were overpromised. You shouldn't be giving a guy that works for 20 years $65,000 a year Viagra and taking care of his wife for the rest of his life or her life when they work for 20 years for $50,000. It doesn't work like that, guys. Y'all need to figure it out. But these politicians, they need to figure out who they work for, and we need to get them out of office. Back in the day, we would have tarred and feathered them in town square.
Well, Jeff, I don't argue with much of what you've said. My mantra has been for the last 20 years on radio, the politicians need to remember who they work for. They work for us. Unfortunately, the reason they don't believe they work for us is because we advocated our responsibility, primarily federally speaking. We were given so much for so long with nothing required of us. Life was good. Real estate prices were going through the roof. People were refinancing, buying toys left and right. And then all of a sudden the bottom falls out. We wake up from our giant slumber and realize, man, what happened? Well, this is what happens when you stop making people accountable. Life's good for a little while, but it doesn't last. That's the mantra of this show. Politicians work for us. There's also something, unless you just want a camp build and have one side always hammering the other, you have to negotiate. And more than anything, you've heard me talk about Mayor Rawlings, and I'm not a hypocrite. I don't back up on that just because he comes to be a guest. But if you want to get anything done, you have to leave the door open a little bit. And by leaving the door open a little bit, you get people to say generally what they believe, and then you hold them to it. That's the key. You just don't do an interview and then, okay, that's fine. Now what do you want to do? You take note of the points that are given, and then you hold politicians accountable. That's what you do. And if you can educate some of this nonsense away, then by all means, that's the best way. Education sticks the longest. Yelling and calling names and back and forth. Number one, I'm not that kind of show. I never have been. I remember I did a show with, at one point in time, I did, afternoon drive was 3 to 6. I did morning drive. And then, coming on right behind me was Tom Likas. Anybody remember Tom Likas? He was a firebrand. He yelled and screamed at everybody. That accomplishes nothing. It's entertaining for a little bit, but after a while, where's the substance? There is none. Those people that you most disagree with, if you're going to get anything done on our behalf, if they're already installed in a political position short of a recall, you've got to find some mutual ground, some way to get along, even if it's only for that issue or the moment. But that's my take on things. 3:44 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP.
Straight talk and honest answers on the auto industry. The Car Pro Show with Jerry Reynolds. Tomorrow morning at 9. News Talk 820. WBAP.com.
All right, 3:49 the time. Glad you're along. 1-800-288-WBAP. 1-800-288-9227. You know, now that the emotional fervor is starting to die down, and I would assume that's because the left, the anti-gun lobbies, Democrats in general, have backed off politicizing a school shooting, exploiting the teenage emotion that goes with those kind of things. You didn't see that in Columbine. Do you remember Columbine? 1999. You didn't see the left. You didn't see Democrats. You didn't see the anti-gun lobby. You didn't see them go after the NRA. We tried to find solutions. And it all really came back to the parents had no clue what their kids were doing. Let me get to your calls. Dale in Dallas. Dale, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Dale?
Yeah, it's Rick. All right. How's it going?
Good.
Okay. I just want to say, you're doing a great job with your show. And I am a retired Dallas police officer.
Thank you.
And I was listening to Mike Rawlins, and I tell you, I was bouncing off this concrete like it was another world, because this guy, he wasn't saying anything that was concrete to answer your questions that you were asking him, and that's the way he is, but that's the way a politician may be. Now, as far as gun control, he's not certified or qualified to even comment on what it will take to take care of a national problem when it comes to gun safety, because he can't even take care of the crime in the city of Dallas, okay? Because right now the Dallas Police Department is operating at a fashion of 2,700 police officers, and it's federally mandated at somewhere between 35 and 36.
I was going to ask you, aren't we about 1,000 officers short?
Yes, sir. Yes, we are. And there's one thing that individuals that are listening, if they don't do anything else today, pull up a group called the Dallas Citizens Council. Not the Dallas City Council, but the Dallas Citizens Council. This is where all your money-making people are in Dallas and also in the state of Texas. This is a membership group that's full of millionaires and billionaires. This is who the Dallas City Council work for, the Dallas Citizens Council. This is ran by basically the Staubach family. Now, there's an underground secret society going on in Dallas. I think if the citizens really understood what's going on, this is why nothing can be corrected in order for the citizens to be safe, the businesses to be safe. But you have to I got to put this out there, too. George Carlin, everybody's familiar with George Carlin, right?
Right.
He's got a skit on, it's called The Big Club. Pull that up also and listen to what he says. And I guarantee you, if you listen to what he says, it explains exactly what's going on in this country as a whole. But right here amongst us in the city of Dallas, there's a bunch of ethics violations that are going on right now in this city. The Dallas Citizens Council, the Dallas Observer, has done a lot of research on them, and it's all about money with them. They do not care about the safety of the citizens in this community at all. You heard the mayor talk about putting officers in the schools. There's not enough officers on these streets, Rick, to keep the neighborhoods safe. But they make these blinded promises to these people because they have no idea how to confirm what he's saying.
Well, this is the reason, Dale, I ask him that. I mean, I'm not a neophyte to the political world after being a talk show host for a couple of decades.
Right.
And yes, he is a radical centrist, but he did say, yes, I would be in support of teachers being armed. I would be in support of law enforcement in schools. No, we're not a sanctuary city. We cooperate with ICE. He made some definitive, it wasn't easy, but he did make some definitive statements. Now, if we all agree that putting law enforcement in schools, while we would have to agree society has slid to that point, and if you're a former police officer, you know that, then it opens up the dialogue once again for where's the money for the officers we need. You can't say we're doing everything to keep the citizens safe if we're 1,000 officers short.
Yes, and I tell you, Rick, it is an embarrassment to see these politicians to get on stage right here in this city. I lost 5 friends July 7th, 2016, downtown Dallas, and I knew a couple of them really great. Michael Smith, Now, these guys, when I saw the mayor and all of the other politicians on this stage, the international stage, talking about how much they love the police officers and firefighters in this city and in this country. But that was the biggest lie we ever saw or heard in our life. But we knew that because we knew what they were doing, taking advantage of this opportunity to entertain the people in an international state. But right here in this city, Rick, I promise you, the officers, the younger guys that are still working, has received a bad message from these politicians at City Hall.
You know, of course, that's why they're leaving left and right the city of Dallas to go, believe it or not, to some of the smaller communities because they get paid better. I mean, it's a damn crime if a police officer's family has to use food stamps. That's shameful. I mean, the people that we put our kids with for 8 hours a day, teachers, we don't pay them anything. The people that stand between us and someone that would come to take our stuff or take our life, we don't pay them anything. And I know my son-in-law is a canine officer. You know, there are so many things that need to be, of course, you know, the key is you can't eat an elephant in one bite or hold a mayor to task in 14 minutes. But at the same time, you want to talk about putting police officers in schools? You bet. The general consensus, it works. Now let's talk about the fact that Dallas is short 1,000 police officers. Dale, I'm up against a hard break. I appreciate the call. I appreciate what you did for us. 3:55 the time. Your call straight ahead.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 4 minutes after the hour, 4:04 the time. Glad you're along. Well, to recap, and man, you are lighting up my email like I've never seen it. I only got the tail end of it. Well, part of that is because, you know, we're kind of an odd afternoon drive show as far as hours are concerned. We're on 2 to 5, and I guess many of you just caught part of the mayor's interview, Mayor Rawlings. To his credit, he did come on the air. What was learned, he would support arming teachers if everybody else does. He would support putting law enforcement in schools if everybody else thinks it's a good idea. He says, no, we are not a sanctuary city. He would prefer the NRA to go somewhere else, but in fact, if there are marches and demonstrations, he says we'll be ready. He said he would entertain the idea of sitting down with Wayne LaPierre, he's the head of the NRA, to talk, to get some education. And he did say that he would come to the gun range. So, you know, I asked Mayor Pro Tem Caraway, now I don't know that I can count on one hand the things I agree with either the mayor or the Mayor Pro Tem, but if you're going to have any kind of dialogue, they're already in the positions. One's a mayor, one's the Mayor Pro Tem, which is, you know, in other cities, a vice mayor. If they will go to the gun range, put their hands on, see which they're talking about, you know, that goes a long way in my book. I'm probably not going to still agree politically, but at least there, you know, he agreed he'd sit down and talk with anybody. And yes, he'd go to the gun range and he likes to shoot. He was afraid, David, that the Mayor Pro Tem might shoot him. I said I'd try to keep that from happening. But great. Both of you come out. We'll go out to Eagle Gun Range. I know David Prince. He's the owner. He'll set everything up. You can look, touch, feel, shoot, an AR. ARs, for whatever reason, sort of like the NRA, become the targets. Those AR-15s that, you know, are like hundreds of other similar type rifles that people can, you know, walk in and purchase if they pass the background check. You can also look, touch, feel, see, and shoot, if you like, a fully auto AR, which normally people can't walk in and buy. if you got enough cash and time and a dealer with a federal firearms license and so on, it can happen, but it doesn't happen easily. And the guy that said that he would accommodate us, I think he even said lunch, didn't he, David? I think he did.
I sure did. I'd be glad to.
It's David Prince, owner of Eagle Gun Range. David, how you doing?
I'm awesome this afternoon. How are you, Rick?
I'm doing well. All right. Well, it looks like it's going to be 3 instead of 2.
You're definitely welcome, and we appreciate you getting those two gentlemen together. And I commend you for being able to pull that off. You had a great interview with Mr. Caraway, and I'm sorry I missed the one with the mayor, but it sounds like from everything I just heard you describe, it went really well. If he's willing to sit down and openly talk about something, I don't know if you can ask for much more. Like you said, we don't agree with everything, but I'll have lunch if you'd like to have lunch here, and we'll have a meeting, and I'll give you a meeting space. I mean, it's between you and them. I'm just grateful that you have chosen us to give you a chance to demonstrate these things.
Well, I'd like you to be a part of it, David, because you're very knowledgeable, and this whole thing is about education. If people were more educated, not only about the gun issue, but what laws are in place and what you can do and what you can't do, maybe the rhetoric wouldn't be so shrill. Education generally takes care of that kind of thing. So hopefully we'll have the mayor pro tem, myself, and you in a sit down, and then you've got the firearms there. Everybody can look at, touch, hold, and fire if they want, right?
Yes, sir. It's things like this are horrible situations to get started. I mean, anytime people die, and especially mass killings, is bad. It's bad for the families. It's bad for the nation, and so anything we can do to ratchet that down and make it not happen again, I'd love to be able to talk about. But it has to be something reasonable and tangible that you can really work with, that makes sense for the nation, not just for a small, group that's trying to cram things down our throats. So
exactly.
I'm grateful that you put all this together. I really am.
Well, something else, to their credit, they could have said, "Hey, I don't have to talk to this talk show. I don't have to talk to this guy. I'm the mayor of Dallas, Texas. I don't have to do this. I'm the mayor pro tem. I don't have to do this." But they did. So
yes, sir, they did. I'm grateful.
And you don't get that done by yelling and screaming and throwing names around. David,
very well.
David Sherrard, police officer in Richardson, Texas. Responding to a call, a domestic disturbance at a apartment complex, was gunned down, leaving a wife and two girls. You stepped up, started a raffle. I think initially you were hoping to raise $10,000 or whatever it was.
Yes, sir.
Try to make their life a little better. I mean, to try and tangibly show that we care about our police officers, we support them. So you were raffling off a rifle, and then one of your vendors donated a handgun. I'll let you tell everybody what those are. And also another place, they kicked in a really cool fire pit, that you can enjoy in your back deck in the summertime. And then somebody kicked in some tickets, right?
Yes, sir. Dallas Star tickets, 2 different nights. They're going to be, I think there's a $400 value on one set of tickets and a $500 value on the other set. We're raffling those off for $5 a piece. It's in the platinum section of the stadium, right there on the goal line. It gives them access to the Lexus Club, is what he's told me. 18 rows up from the ice. They're supposed to be really, really nice tickets. And we're going to try to do those kind of a separate raffle for $5 a piece. So once again, all those raffles have to be in place. You have to do them here in the stores, both stores, just because it's you have to fill out the coupons and some other things. And just like I said, online donations could be done at our website, but we can't do raffles through our website.
Sure, and you're raffling off a long gun, which it's about a $3,000 rifle, isn't it?
Yes, sir. It's a SCAR. It's 5.56. It's a semi-automatic rifle, and then we're an HK that's worth about $700 that a vendor gave us. The fire pit's worth $1,000 for Circle J, and then Black All Mechanical, one of the guys that handle our big, massive air handlers, have graciously donated the Star hockey tickets. So.
Wow, it's first of all, I've done this before. I've raised money. I started the Warrior Foundation in San Diego, and I know how time intensive this can become. So thank you for putting this together. All right, I need a total. How much have you been able to raise?
It's right at about $24,000.
Wow.
Yeah, we were. Like I said, I was hoping for 10, and it's just over $24,000, and we still have a couple of weeks to go. And we're just excited to you and your listeners for helping us out, Rick. Most of the times we've raised some $40,000 for police officers throughout the 5 years we've been in existence, and $45,000, and we think. Just about 2 weeks, the fever dies and people's, it just kind of falls off a little bit. But because of you and your gracious time that you've given us and your listeners, this thing is still going strong. I mean, it's been amazing. Like I said, I thought we had kind of tap out at about 10,000, but because of your listeners and our great customers, we're well over 23,000 now.
That's amazing. I got to tell you, when it comes to the listeners, generally, all you have to do is say, hey, there's a need. It has to do with law enforcement. A wife now has lost her husband. Daughters have lost their father. And they come through. Tell people how they can get involved with the raffle, with the locations, and if they just want to donate, they can do that too.
The raffles will be taking place at our stores. We have 491 West Valley Ridge in Louisville, just north of Main Street on 35 there. And the other store is here at 14400 Midway Road, just south of Beltline here in Farmers Branch. So you can stop by there, or they can go online just to donate at www.eaglegunrangetx, like in Texas.com. Click on it. It's right at the top. There's a place, click to donate to the officer's family, and you can just give money there. Just every time you've been gracious to put us on your show, our website gets lit up and donations start coming in. So we're grateful. I think last time we talked, with $200 hit our website real quick. So
well, it's a great audience. I've been doing this a couple decades on the West Coast and all over the place, and by far the audience in Dallas, Fort Worth area is just amazing. So my personal thanks to them, and get ready for that website to light up again.
Yeah, we're ready. We're going to have hopefully a nice check to give this family, and it won't replace the husband, but at least maybe it may help a little bit on some of the bills they're going to be facing.
Just a tangible way to reach out and say that we care and we support our law enforcement.
Yes, sir, it is.
David Prince with Eagle Gun Range. I appreciate it very much. We'll step aside very quickly. Check that afternoon drive. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 21 minutes after the hour, 4:21 the time. I'm going to have to stop going to the email. We may replay the mayor's interview for you. And we'll have it on the podcast page as well. David, how does that, is he on the phone? I can't see. Okay. All right. We need to move about half of all that stuff to one side or the other so you can actually see one another. How's that going to work on the podcast page? Is that a standalone audio on demand? How's that work?
It's going to be both. It's going to be on the 3 o'clock hour for the podcast, and I will also have it on demand, and it will also be on the promo reel. So it should, as they're looking through the website, they should be able to see it if they file through it. Just go to WBAP.com, and from there, we'll take you by the hand and lead you wherever you need to go. And also be on the audio demand.
All right, very good. Let me go to Clint in Cedar Hill. Clint, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Clint?
Yeah, thank you. And you are definitely valued.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I have 4 really quick points, okay?
All right.
Okay, analysis of the mayor. First, definitely not a listener, but an Uber talker.
Yeah.
Number 2, he's more a nothingist than a centrist. I mean, he probably didn't promise you a thing. 3, he relies less upon principle and more upon consensus. And the main question there is, which social circles does he seek consensus with? And finally, he relies more upon process and position, which means he's the kind of person who sticks his wet finger up into the wind before finding a position.
Oh, I like that. That's what I've used for our federal representatives. Having worked in D.C. and done the meetings in the abandoned warehouses in Arlington, just across the bridge from the nation's capital, and which I actually did several times. You can always tell the professional politicians because their right or left index finger is always wrinkled, like a 5-year-old that's been in the bathtub too long. And that comes from wetting it numerous times a day and sticking it in the political wind to see what they should do. Now, I don't know the mayor well enough to determine whether that's the case or not, but this is what I do know. After a couple of decades radio and television hosting, if a politician goes on air, goes on tape, goes on camera, and says he'll do something, then that's basically a benchmark. That's an archival moment, if you will, because then you hold them to that. That's what you hold them to. And if they change their mind, if they don't follow through, then we have a reasonable disagreement. All right. That's the way I work. Going on the air and shouting and screaming and calling people names it might make me feel better. As a matter of fact, it probably would make me feel better, but it doesn't get me down the road to where I want to get, which is at the end of the day, no one's 100% right. No one's 100% wrong 100% of the time. What do we want? We want school shootings to stop. So we don't want sanctuary cities. We want, I'm not going to go through the list, but you get me, right? If a mayor or an elected official says, I will do this or I will do that, or this isn't the way it is, or that's the way it is, and he's very good at staying in the middle. There's no doubt about that. But we were able to get some definitive answers from him, and now we hold him to that. And if he's a professional politician, which I suspect he is, he knows that. As a matter of fact, we'll replay that for you before the top of the hour, all right? Just so I can ease up this email, because I'm never going to be able to get to all these, all right? 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227, 4:25 the time. Eric Bushman, he's right around the corner in the WBAP newsroom, and we'll check your afternoon drive. I'm Rick Roberts. 4:33 the time. Good afternoon. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion. Your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. We do this every day. We start your afternoon drive at 2 o'clock from 2 to 5 Central Time. Toll free anywhere in the country, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Let me get to Mason in Glen Rose. Mason, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Rick? I am 18, about to turn 19, and I've been living on my own ever since I turned 18. And Trump's statements about prohibiting guns on people under 21 has really got me worried for my own personal safety, because living on my own, I would like to have a gun to protect myself. And I understand that members of this generation and children of this generation have caused many people to frown upon us as a group. And there's a lot of 18-year-olds that, they shouldn't have a gun for sure. But, he's made statements repeatedly saying that we will protect the Second Amendment. Well, it doesn't seem like he's going to be doing that for this particular group of individuals.
So let me see if I get this right. You're 18, about to turn 19. Happy birthday. And you own a firearm.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. You own a firearm, personal protection firearm. What type of firearm is it, just out of curiosity?
I keep a 30-30 rifle, and I'd like to have a concealed carry, but can't do that yet.
Right. So you've got a hunting rifle that you keep, and you've been on your own for how long?
Ever since I turned 18, so about a year.
About a year. Okay. How's that? Yeah, this has nothing to do with my answer. I'm just curious. How's that working for you?
It's stressful for sure. But I'm still going to school, so I can't work full time. Still in high school, which is another thing that bothers me because in high school, we have one police officer in the school half of the time, and it'd be very easy for somebody to come in and do exactly what happened in Florida.
So you're worried, and by the way, kudos to you, and I'm going to throw a positive thought up for you because I was emancipated at just before I was 16. So I was on my own from about a few months before my 16th birthday. And it's tough. It's tough. You don't get to do the things that everybody else does because you got to do what you got to do to make a few bucks. And it works out. It gets easier as long as you keep working hard. But to your question about Trump's statement about 21-year-olds, as I understand it thus far, and none of this is in stone because nobody's come up with a piece of legislation yet. But the mayor or the governor of Florida, President Trump and a few others have talked about raising the purchase age to 21. Now, I don't believe it's possible to say, okay, everybody under 21, you have to give up your guns. I don't think that would ever happen. But as far as purchasing, that's the only thing I have heard where the age would be raised. You couldn't go purchase a 30-30 until you were 21. If you already have one, if it's already yours, just like me, my first 22, I think I was about 10 or 11, but it was given to me. I didn't go to a gun shop and buy it. As a matter of fact, it was a piece of junk, but it was the first thing I had. I think somebody brazed the bolt back on because it was a bolt action single shot. But I don't think you have anything to worry about unless you're dead set on wanting to go buy something.
It does worry me because if they start throwing around because the old phrase of if you can go die for your country, you should be able to buy a beer.
Right.
And now there are people who are twisting that around, especially on the Democratic side, who are saying if you can't buy a beer, you shouldn't be able to own a firearm. But you can still go die for your country.
No, I see the dilemma in conflicting positions. I don't know that anybody is got the plan. I don't think so.
Because this was first brought up 2 days ago. And
right.
It's got me worried.
Did you see the CNN farce that was on television where they brought all these teenagers in? Oh, well, that's good. That I think just muddied the waters. I'm hoping.
Oh yeah.
The politicizing, these teenagers' grief and emotion and so forth. I'm hoping that will stop because the dust has to settle before we can come to any type of rational plan to try to keep this from happening again. I happen to think putting law enforcement in schools and then limiting the ingress and egress. In other words, put hotel doors on the entire school. Those allow you to get out, but no one to get in. I think there are a lot of things we're going to look at. I don't know that raising the purchase age to 21 is necessarily in stone with anybody. And I don't know where you got your 30-30. I would imagine it was handed down.
Yeah, that one was handed down to me by my grandfather.
Yeah.
And I would like to comment on the school safety, because I know that Trump's been saying a lot about arming teachers. And I agree and disagree on that. As a student in a school, I can think of many teachers who I would prefer not to be armed. But it seems to me that if somebody has a concealed carry, if there's a teacher who has a concealed carry license, then they should be allowed to carry that into the school.
I agree.
And now that there is this piece of legislation that's getting pushed right now to allow you to get a concealed carry from any other state, and then that works in all states. So even if you can't get a concealed carry in Texas, you could get one, and I think Utah is pretty easy to get a concealed carry, and it would work in Texas. And that's something that's going to kind of worry me and other people, because there are certain states where you can just take a test with about 5 questions on it, and boom, you got your concealed carry. And because I like the concealed carry in Texas, I wish I could get it at 18, but that's another point.
Well, I think one thing when there's a lot of talk about whether a concealed carry should transfer across state lines. I had a concealed carry probably since it first started. But when I went to California, I was in California for 10 days, then I'd come home for 10 days and do the show via satellite, back and forth, back and forth. Well, getting a concealed carry there is like, is almost impossible.
Good luck.
Yeah. And, I got to be friends with Bonnie DeManis, the head district attorney of San Diego. So, eventually it was not a problem. But for most people, that's impossible. The talk now is whether a concealed carry will transfer across state lines. And, of course, the Democrats are dead set against that.
Personally, I like it because I've been working for a long time. I drive for work whenever I'm not going to school, and I would like to, whenever I get a concealed carry, if I happen to go outside of the state, to not have to worry about carrying my pistol. Sure. But the only thing is that in that legislation, you can get a concealed carry from a state that's not your own, and it still works. So you can have never gone to Utah, but you can get a concealed carry permit with Utah in order to conceal carry in your home state. Right. That's the only thing that bothers me, and I think that's one of the big points that bothers a lot of people.
Yeah, and it bothers me as well. I've got a break here, but I got to tell you, you seem extremely mature for an 18-year-old. I don't know how you ended up, as mature as you are, but I wish you nothing but the best. Keep working, work hard, and things will turn around.
Oh, thank you kindly, sir.
All right. I appreciate the listenership. That's Mason from Glen Rose. That's quite a kid. I like him. He's not a kid, really. He's 18, but you get my meaning. Mason, thank you for the call. 4:42 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. Let's check your afternoon drive. All right, 4:47 the time. Glad you're along. This is the Court of Public Opinion. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Let's go to, is it Stephanie? Stephanie, thank you for waiting. Hi, Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie. All right, let's go to Bill in Richardson. Bill, thanks for waiting.
Hi, Rick. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, when I originally called, I had 2 points, and after that fellow over in Glen Rose called, now I have 3. First, let me say this. I think that what Trump was talking about and other people on this raised the age to 21 is for things like AR-15s. It's not for every long gun. It's just for things what would be termed as a modern sporting rifle, not 30-30s or bolt-action rifles or shotguns, that sort of thing. The age is already 21 for pistols. That's why you can't have a concealed carry license, because you can't have it till you're 21. And all they're talking about doing is sliding these AR-15s and AR-10s and stuff into that age bracket of being 21.
Yeah, and see, that makes no sense to me. There are hundreds of AR-15 style semi-auto rifles. They're made by everybody, and they all look scary, but they're all semi-auto, and you can buy other semi-auto long rifles as well.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And this is just something for the debate, I think. I think they want to get it categorized where they're just take it away from the younger guys. I don't know whether that's right or wrong. That's not up for me to decide. But the reason I wanted to call is, who does the NRA represent? It represents legal gun owners in this country, people who like to shoot, people who like competition, people who hunt, those kinds of things. They back the laws 100%. The NRA is not representing the people in Cabrini Green who are shooting up the neighborhood. And it makes, to me, as much sense to go after the NRA over this Florida shooting as it does to go after the AAA over drunk drivers.
Yeah. I have repeated this since it happened. I don't know how the NRA even got slid into this debate.
Well, I don't think they should be, because they were the first ones. Take a look recently at the bump stock issue. They came out within days of that Las Vegas shooting saying, ban them. We're okay with that. And they never got credit for it. Very few people know that, but they were there way before Trump ever got there. there's not much use for a bump stock. They're not accurate at all. They just burn up a lot of ammunition. So that's my point with that is it kind of leads into the next point, and that's what I think that they ought to do is, instead of denigrating the NRA and wasting all this time talking about what bad guys they are, why not just throw it on them and say, listen, what's your idea of the solution for this? And they're going to get a multifaceted view back, I think, and it's going to start with enforcing the laws that are on the books, and it'll go from there. But I think they need to be part of the conversation as to how to fix it instead of being relegated as the enemy by the liberal.
I could not agree more with you. I mean, the NRA is about safety. It's about education. It's about law enforcement. It's about upholding the Second Amendment. They should be a part of the conversation. And just like you said, if, the AR-15, it's scary looking. It looks like a military rifle. Let's ban that, or let's, raise the minimum age on that. That's the entire reason I asked the mayor and the mayor pro tem to come out to Eagle Gun Range. Look at all the hardware that you're talking about and how they operate. They don't operate dissimilar from other semi-automatic weapons. I mean, it's crazy how the NRA ended up being the boogeyman in this deal when they should have been reaching out to the NRA. Hey, what's your idea? You deal with guns all the time. Tell us what your opinion is on how to deal with this. I agree with you, Bill. Good call. Very good call. Bill in Fort Worth. Bill, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Bill?
Good to talk to you, Rick. Two quick points I got to make here. I'm afraid we're going down a rat hole if we start trying to do some kind of psychological testing on people to determine this stuff, because I think if we look at some of these shooters that we've had recently, the church shooter, I'm not too sure about, but I don't think you could classify those other guys as being criminally insane. Outside society norms, yes, I'll give you that. Okay, if we go through and say, okay, we'll ban weapons from people that are having psychological issues, it's not going to work.
Well, nothing has worked so far since Columbine. We've done nothing. We haven't done anything. So if you don't do anything and you still have the problem, then, a rational person would say, okay, well, maybe we should do something. Okay, now we need to get everybody together, and I mean everybody, the NRA, various elected officials that have been sitting on their hands too long, and let's figure out, okay, is there anything we can do without changing the Second Amendment? Second Amendment doesn't need to be changed. We need to be changed. And you're not going to make that happen overnight either, unfortunately. We can't restore the value of human life in people's hearts with a wave of a magic wand. I wish we could. But we also can't sit here, well, I hope we never get to a point in society where we have to have, too late, we're there. It already happened. And it already happened when we were turning the other cheek 50 times. So, it's, I'm sorry. We're here. Something's got to be done. By the way, something in Florida has happened, putting In God We Trust up in schools. Yeah, they passed it. The House passed it. Thank God. If you want to stop all this bloodshed, if you want to stop all this man's inhumanity to man, restore God to the schools. Of course, making that happen is probably a feat greater than I can accomplish, but I can support it. 4:54 the time. God's blessings on each and every one of you, whether you agree with me or not. That's always my priority. We're with you every day. We start your afternoon drive at 2, Monday through Friday, 2 to 5. Stick around. Mark Levin, I'm sure he's upset about something. I'll be back with you tomorrow at 2 on News Talk 820 WBAP.
Job gets done. That's the only way I know. Don't stop till everything's gone. Straight ahead, never turn